critical essay writing. It's going to be the third workshop on critical essay writing. The first one was conducted by Professor Ravin Hangwella, and then the second one by Professor Varune De Silva. And Dr. Ranil Abeyasinghe is going to do the third one. And Sir had promised to do this quite a while ago, and we were actually wanting it to be done in person or physically being present at Kandy Hospital or Peradeniya Hospital. So that's why it got delayed so much. So we thought it will be much more interesting and much more effective to be done in person or being physically present. But anyway, with the current circumstances, we thought of going ahead online. And it's mainly, the Sri Lanka College of Psychiatrists has been doing this, focusing mainly on the essay writing because of the high failure rate last time. And we were quite mindful and about that and wanted to help the trainees in improving their essay writing skills. And not only on the workshops on essay writing, we have done several essay topics have been discussed in the college lecture series. To start with, it was Dr. Kalyan Rodrigo who talked to us on development of community psychiatric services in Sri Lanka. And then Dr. Jan Mendis on development of community psychiatric services beyond tsunami. And then it was Professor Nalaka Mendis who talked to us about improving mental health of people in Sri Lanka and the challenges facing the profession, followed by Professor Dinath Samarasinghe on cultural aspects of mental illness, and Professor Samudra Katriarachchi on do psychiatrists need to treat personality disorders. And I don't think Dr. Ranil Abeyasinghe needs an introduction, but because mainly it's going to be trainees getting involved or participating in today's workshop, I will very briefly introduce him. Dr. Ranil Abeyasinghe had been the chairman of the Board of Study in Psychiatry of the PGIM and the president of the Sri Lanka College of Psychiatrists. And he's a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists as well as the fellow of the Sri Lankan College of Psychiatrists. And he has been a trainer and examiner in the MD Psychiatry exam for several years and been the head of department of the Psychiatry of University of Peradeniya for a long time. And he's our mentor and guru for more than half of the psychiatrists in Sri Lanka who are currently practicing. And I'm very happy that Sir has given a topic on suicide because he has done a lot of research on suicide, investigated and submitted a report on suicide patterns and associated factors. And he was an active member of the Presidential Task Force, which submitted recommendations of prevention of suicide in Sri Lanka. And Dr. Abeyasinghe has published several books, both in Sinhala and English, on illicit alcohol, social phobia, depression, parenting skill, and so on and so forth. And without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Abeyasinghe to conduct this workshop on essay writing skills. Thank you very much, sir, for agreeing to do this for us and giving 3 topics in advance so that the trainees could write the essays. And I really hope that they will greatly benefit from this workshop. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Gihan. So, hello, everybody. I noticed that there are more than 50 trainees and some trainers as well who are participating in this webinar. Right. So before I give my own ideas about essay writing, I just want to show you 1 or 2 essays. We don't have the time to show all the essays that have been sent, and I would like you to read them and tell me what you think of it. Right. So I know many of the trainees will not speak. Therefore, I think there is a facility to send your comments where as a text message as well. So please do that. So first, I would like you to read one of the essays, right? And let's see where we are. Okay. The question is, discuss critically the management of mental health disorders during COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so there is a sketch, right? We will go through that later. So where do we start? So there's.
Will you be able to share the screen?
I have put it on the screen. Can you see? No.
No, not yet.
Ah, okay. Then that means it's not going to be possible to share it, right?
So you have to select it. I think you go to that and select that particular screen. You share. You have to select that particular screen. You will have
If you can, yeah, if you can just put it first on your laptop and then get it minimized. Then you, when you ask for the green button, share the screen, then it will come up.
No, I'm not that sophisticated. I don't.
No, you did that last time.
That no, that's those are the slides, but this is not in the slides because you can't put that. You can't put that into a slide. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to do is
even if it is an image, sir, you can share it. I think if you click on share screen button and then your screen will appear on that. If you can select the one you want to share, I think it will appear.
Okay, yeah. Let me try.
Open the image, sir. Open the image.
I have opened the image.
Yeah. Right. Then share it, sir. Share. Go to the share button and select that.
There's no share button for that. That's
the green button in the Zoom.
In the bottom of the Zoom, green button.
Okay, let me try.
Share screen. There is a green button, sir.
Okay.
Unless you email it to one of us, Gihan.
Yeah, I can, Ranil sir, yeah. It's Mr. Sumudu here. I can share it.
If you can email it to Sumudu.
I have it, sir. I have it.
Sumudu's having it. Yeah, Sumudu's
you have it. Okay, you can share that.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Once that you
so is this the one that you are going to read?
No, not that one. There's
not
another one.
The one.
Yeah, the one.
Okay. Yeah. You see it now, sir?
This is the one. Yes, that's right. That's good. Now, can everybody see this?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good.
We can't see the question, sir. Question.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Got to bring it down. Let's go past sketch and go to the main essay. Further down. Right. I think this is the starting point. No, a little bit above, just above the page divider.
Go up a bit. Yes.
That's somewhere here.
You were stating ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, this is the starting point.
Yes.
COVID-19 is a pandemic.
That is the conclusion. What is that? Its own impact on mental health.
No, it's not the conclusion.
It's part of the sketch, conclusion.
Yeah, the part of the sketch. That's part. Let's go past the conclusion. That's part of the sketch.
Now you start from here, sir. Next.
From that point,
from here, yes.
COVID-19 is a deadliest pandemic globally, infecting more than 210 million people and usually resulting more than 4.41 million deaths. Can everybody read this now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good. Okay, let's read it quiet. In Sri Lanka, also the situation is rapidly turning to a tragic course, infecting 373,165 people so far. causing 6,790 deaths up to this date. During the last week, there was daily 160 to 180 human lives. With the COVID-19, during the last 2 years, humans live lifestyles and freedom has lost as prevention needed social distancing, mandatory wearing masks, institutions like school, university closure, restricting workforce, new concepts of something online, learning online. Working from home has made never normal circumstances to all. Never normal. First time I heard that, okay. Psychiatry is a unique specialty of medical sciences. Yeah. Partial assessment, identifying mental health disorders, mainly by the clinical assessment of history. Mental state examination and relevant physical examination, rather than blood or imaging investigations. So social distancing has impact on proving care, or looks like proving care, but I guess it is providing care. Keeping patient away, wearing masks, seeing through polythene screens hinders development of rapport and trust with the patient. As mental health facilities are not given attention and of government as other medical fields, clinic sitting, board sitting, staffing are poorly allocated with newly demanded space. When ventilation, hand washing, feeling very important to provide for healthcare workers.
Difficult to provide, sir. Difficult to provide.
Difficult for health workers. Military workers who expose at front line to infected person are in fear of their own safety. Fear they will spread the disease to his or her loved ones. So there are different kinds of concerns, distress to different age groups and different job categories. Clearly, this period is stressful and will lead to anxiety, depressive symptoms in many. For those who already had mental illness due to these psychosocial stresses, with COVID-19 pandemic and due to lack of continuity of medications or therapy, will make them more vulnerable to relapse. The vulnerable people affects more. So to manage mental health disorder during the COVID-19 pandemic needs to identify these changes and how it affects and bring about new mental health problems. Other than secondary effects, as mentioned, were changes in psychosocial issues by infecting with COVID-19, there are identifying neuropsychiatric sequelae with cognitive impairment, depression, anxiety in about 30% of patients hospitalized, liaising services with medical specialists, and prolonged care or poor care. In these cases, mandatory to
Providing care.
Providing care.
Continue their treatment and improve recovery. And also in treating centers with substance use disorders, non-mentally ill people to provide services to control substances withdrawal. Control mental illness also mandatory for case management of this patient and prevent absolute
Absconding probably, sir.
Absconding and more spreading of COVID-19. For people who are following mental health clinics, long-acting injectables programs should continue providing medicine for them via prepared interferes with PPE to deliver prepared what?
I think it's prepared teams.
LAI. What's
Teams.
Teams with PPE to deliver long-acting injections.
LAI. Okay, I'm learning. And new patient clinics and OPD care for new mental health problems or concerns also necessary as explained. This is a stressful situation. Vulnerable individuals will present with behavior problems as acute stress disorder, adjustment anxiety disorders, substance use disorders, increased domestic violence. Children like setting needs to be adjusted for new requirements of distancing, hand washing, increase of ventilation, building screens, methods to communicate with minimum contacts with the patient, also to provide least adequate care for them. For prevention and community awareness, can use media, social network for delivery of mental health education and provide tips for managed mental health drugs this stressful period and also communicate new changes of existing care to patients. According to the available technology, reason consider possibility of
new technology.
Treatment, telemedicine, ways to teledoc, updoc, etc. Ways to overcome obstacles of social distancing by teledoc up to accessing patients via video links. WhatsApp, Viber also can use successfully to talk with patient with video and send prescriptions and to reassure or provide. Media can be used as well as local for preventing.
Social media.
Okay. There are valuable YouTube videos done by many psychiatrists, child psychiatrists to increase awareness of managing stress during the pandemic situation and providing changes of existing care in clinics to people. For newly occurring problems, to provide mental health care, hotlines like 1926 and the frontline workers pray helpline telephone number with something to get needed, advance without. Keeping OPD new patient clinics open with adequate safety to the patient and the mental health care workers also necessary for these will come and take the medicine. For those mental illness diagnosed patients who already register in clinics or long-acting injectable programs provided medical. Post officers have worked with hospitals and successfully distributed medication. Homes. Injectable programs also have been continued by dedicated staff wearing PPE. This has helped to prevent relapses. Needed acute patients are provided with inward care and NIMH after screening for screening with PCR and isolating them as we needed. But dig these services prioritized and very high risk patients are admitted only and others remained at OPD.
Reviewed at OPDs.
Reviewed. Follow-up patients contacted by telephone, not meeting in person, may not be able to grasp the actual situation. Access patients where telemedicine can see patient's face, but mask and
without mask. Yes.
without mask. Yeah.
And
And
without.
without COVID risk, clinician access patients, but only few patients have access and capability of these technologies. So there are obstacles and limitations to provide mental health services in this new normal COVID-19 pandemic circumstances, but as mental health care providers, we should try much as possible to give care for the patients. It would be better to keep audit of success story rates, obstacles met, and so and to overcome these
Ways to overcome them.
identify and future successful methods. And not providing success, we can stop and try the new ways of providing care. That's the end, I think. Okay, right. Shall we leave it now? And now let's get back to. So there are some examiners who read through this. I'd like to ask you first. What do you feel? What are your feelings about this answer?
So this is Gihan here.
Yeah.
I thought the introduction was way too long.
Yeah.
And to come to the stem or the substance in the what has been asked in the topic, it took a long time for the candidate to come to the stem of the essay.
Right.
And they could have given the different aspects of difficulties of managing COVID-19, I mean, mental health disorders during COVID-19. Like now, the candidate was mostly concentrating on how to manage the already diagnosed patients with psychiatric disorders. But nothing much was taught about, I mean, the new disorders that are emerging with the COVID-19, the new psychiatric disorders emerging with COVID-19, like the illness phobias, the PTSD, and the panic, anxiety, and depressive disorders, which are directly related to COVID-19, which have not been there earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And also the organic problems like the encephalopathies, encephalitis, and the psychiatric sequelae of those COVID-19.
That was mentioned.
Okay.
There was some mention. Yeah.
So I think that was my main observation. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other views?
Yes, I'm Anurad.
Yeah.
So I feel that there were too many paragraphs and
Yeah.
it was disorganized.
Right. Too many things jumbled up together, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other views? It is how I felt was that there were a lot of facts. I mean, there's no question about it, right? But I felt that I have entered a jungle and I wasn't sure where I was going, how I could come out. That's very likely the trainee who wrote this also felt like this towards the end, somewhere in the middle of the writing. Right? Despite having written outline, before writing the actual essay, right? And the other thing is there's a lot of stuff that is not relevant to the question, right? So we will come back to all that, right? So let's start with a few slides which will take us to some. This, can you read this? This is an essay written by a 6-year-old. Can you read this? The wild dog is the member of the dog family, Carnivora. Now the next one, he's not sure how to write it, but so I think he's talking about, he's writing about canine teeth, but so he's not sure how to spell it. So he write carnagial teeth, so they can eat their prey, right? So that's the most important thing for him, right? So, and they live in the dry zone, right? And then of course, because he's not, he can't write anymore, he draws a picture of this creature. This is of course a common jackal, as you can see, right? Now, this is what a 6-year-old attempts, right? And it's not a bad attempt for a 6-year-old, right? He's written 3 sentences, but so he got stuck because he couldn't write anymore. He doesn't have the vocabulary, so he draws it, right? And he draws a jackal. Now that is the human spirit. We want to tell a story, right? And we have been doing it from the days when we were living in caves, right? So they had the fire going in the cave, and these elders told stories which the younger with the youngsters listened to, remembered, and then copied it, right? So that is how human civilization progressed, and that is how we developed speech, vocabulary, all that, right? So as you know, until even in Greek days, there are many wonderful stories, but some of them were not written, right? So everybody wants to tell a story, and everybody wants to write something, express himself. Essay is one of those forms of expressions, and it is a wonderful ways of expression, and of course a fairly sophisticated way of doing it, right? Now, all of you, I'm now addressing the trainees only, all of you have written stories when you were children. Now, that story, this is the kind of story that we wrote. We all wrote stories like this, right? So let's now look at the story that this very same 6-year-old reads. This is the story of the white hare. The hare has a lot of enemies. Among these are foxes, wolves. I don't know how to get rid of this. Is it possible for me to get rid of this one? Okay, I think. Yeah. Wolves, hunting dogs, and still there are many hares around because the hare is grayish brown in summer and white in winter, right? That's introduction. Then what's the body? As soon as the first snow falls, the hare sheds its gray coat and becomes as white as snowball. In a snow-covered field, the fox cannot spot a white hare. Before the fox can make out in which direction the hare's tracks lead, the hare is already nibbling at a young aspen tree in another grove. But sometimes hare is really in trouble. Winter has come, snow has fallen, and suddenly there's a thaw and snow disappears. Now on the black fields, the hare can be seen from afar. So it has to hide in a thicket and wait until snowstorms make the ground white again, right? Now, if you don't want to speak, but send me some text, right? What do you feel about this first paragraph, the introduction, right? It's about the white hare, and so the hare has a lot of enemies, right? How does it sound to you? Trainees?
It keeps us interested from the first sentence, sir.
First sentence, that's right. It grabs you, doesn't it? Right? It really grabs you. And And what does the second sentence say? Among these are foxes, wolves, and hunting dogs. So the person who writes it elaborates a little more, right? And makes it even more interesting. And then says, still there are many hairs around because the hair is grayish brown in summer and white in winter. What does that mean to you? What is he doing there? Say something.
He's giving us a hint of what he is about to elaborate on.
Yeah, correct. And the hint can be, shall we broaden that into something like a thesis, hypothesis? Yes. He's laying down something, doesn't he? Right? It is a kind of, okay, this is the reason why there are so many of them around. Yep. So he's now introducing his thesis. Okay, right. Now look at the title, the white hair, right? How is that introduction so relevant to white hair? Yeah, why is it so relevant? It's relevant because he is going to write about the change in the color, isn't it? And this effect of camouflage. Yeah, right. So the topic is white hair, right? There's no point writing if we was to start something like the white hairs eat spring flowers that emerge in the spring. Would that be relevant? Yeah, any ideas? Anyone? What do you think? Yeah. Say something.
It
Because
doesn't have any significant bearing on why the hair is white, sir.
Yeah, that's right. So therefore, he's not going to bring any relevant information. Has he brought any relevant information into the introduction? It's all very relevant. The white hair, isn't it? You can see that. Yeah. The hair has a lot of enemies, and that's a very striking trait. Amongst these are foxes, wolves, hunting dogs. And still there are many hairs around because the hair is grayish brown in summer and white in winter. It's a wonderful way to introduce, write an introduction. Right? So grab their attention, expand a little bit what you're going to say, and then say, this is my thesis. Right? Okay. So that's the way you write stories. And that is also the way you write introductions, right? We will come back to that, right? Introduction. Now, the next is, as soon as the first snow falls, the hair sheds its gray coat and becomes as white as snowball. In a snow-covered field, the fox cannot spot the white hair. Before the fox can make out in which direction the hair is directed, the hair is already nibbling at a young specimen. Now it's expanded, isn't it? Now he's expanding the whiteness and snow, right? So that thesis now has been expanded, right? And next one, but sometimes the hair is really in trouble, right? So he comes back to this, right? And he develops a counterpoint, as in music, and he says, winter has come, snow has fallen, and suddenly there's a thaw and snow disappears. Now on the black fields, the hair can be seen from afar. So it has to hide in the thicket and wait until snowstorms make ground. So this 6-year-old that I'm talking about, when he comes to that third paragraph, when he says sometimes the hair is in real trouble, winter has come, snow has fallen. Now the boy is now trembling, and he can't sit in one place. He's now trying to run around because the hair is in trouble. Right? He's excited now, right? So that third paragraph has got him excited, right? Suddenly there's and snow disappears, right? So just what this story does to a 6-year-old, your essay must do to the examiner. That is the lesson I want to learn from this. The very same thing that this has done to the 6-year-old that made him get excited and run about, right? And then you must do that to the examiner. Now the question I'm going to ask you is, did that essay do to you? Would that do that to the examiners? What is the answer? Anyone? That essay we read, would that do that to the examiners? Would it get the examiners excited at the end of it?
Not much, sir. No, sir.
Yeah. It would it? Can I ask the examiners, were you excited like the 6-year-olds?
You mean after reading the answer, sir?
Yeah.
Not really. I don't think I did. I was.
So you were not like the 6-year-old who got excited with this next all. No. So examiners' marks depend very much on their excitement, right? So if they are not excited, I will show you later how they mark. All right. So that's one important thing for the trainees to remember, right? So I'm going to introduce to you what is called the rule of 3, right? Always have 3 things. That is the head, the body, and the tail, right? So we are just like that wild dog. Wild dog has what he calls wild dog is a jackal, right? Is a head, body, and a tail. He made sure that they have these 3 things, right? So the same way, we have to have these 3 things: introduction, body, and conclusion. The important thing about, I will come back to introduction is the starting point. And that introduction again must have hopefully three layers. One is a starting point, like this. They has a lot of enemies. That's a starting point, right? And then the background, right? The background, among these, there are foxes, wolves, hunting dogs, and your thesis. Your thesis is still there are many hairs around because the hair is grayish brown in summer and white in winter, right? Then the body has again 3 paragraphs. 3 or more, but minimally 3, right? That is what I would say, right? So so these paragraphs should play for and against the first point, right? That is, their hair is grayish brown in summer. Because of that, they are safe, right? So in your essay about critical analysis of the providing the mental disorders, so you have to have a thesis, right? That it is, your thesis might be any of the following, right? Is one of the most difficult things to do under the circumstances, or that it can be done under these circumstances, or that the new measures must be adopted in order to provide care. There are many ways of introducing, developing a thesis. That is after that is essentially what you follow up, right? In your body, you do that. In the conclusion is the tail, and also remember, often tail is the one that wags the dog, right? not necessarily the dog wagging the tail, because the conclusion is so important. And in all examiners always look at conclusion that you reach. Sometimes you have gone through it very lazily, and then you look at the conclusion, right? So restate the problem, give you a conclusion, and add a sobering statement. So the sobering statement is, so it has to hide in a thicket and wait until snowstorms make the ground white again. So, okay, so now let's prepare this. Let's look at an essay which I have prepared, right? And then we will look at what you do. So the first first thing that you do is, at the starting point is what is called a hook, right? Don't just define things, right? Say something interesting, right? Something that others haven't said, right? Make a statement that grabs attention, right? Say, I forgot to write the question. The question, I think, is something like write an essay about rising depression in adolescents. Okay, so that you're writing an essay, right? Say, most people would define depression. Say that the amount of disability adjusted years it causes, because the WHO has been saying this for a long time, right? So most people would start with that, right? But if you're a good essay writer, just think, okay, no, I don't want to say those things because everybody is saying this. And now the examiner has read 20 scripts that they all said the same thing. And he's so bored, right? He's now thinking about going for dinner or having a drink, right? So I want to say something interesting, right? So you say, depression is widely prevalent in all ages, but it is a recent trend in high prevalence in adolescents. That is of major concern. That is of major concern to psychiatry. Now that is a different way that you're getting in. So that is a hook, right? So you're not saying that depression is prevalent in, this is the prevalence, and that, general statements about depression, that it causes so much disability, etc. You're just zeroing, you're just zooming down on the problem of adolescent depression. That is all that you're doing, right? And then next, give background information, either history, definition, or the debate that is addressed, or even the theory, right? So let's say something like, it is well known that over 50% of all psychiatric disorders manifest before the age of 20 years. However, the rising numbers do not correspond to this. That is what you're saying, that even though we know that all psychiatric disorders manifest, say, more than 50% of them manifest before the age of 20 years, when it comes to depression, it seems to be much more, right? So that if you are looking at prevalence of something like 15% in adolescents, that is a lot more than what you expect, because you expect only 50% of the normal the disorders at that time. Now what you have done is that you're bringing it together in a very close knit argument, right? And next, make your thesis statement or launching pad, right? Now here, like the divers in the Olympic, they have got into the launching pad. Now they're going to dive. And so you say, in an age of increasing prevalence of adolescent depression, it is my contention that it is the increasing stress that is behind this dangerous trend. Because that is your thesis, right? You may choose another thesis, doesn't matter, right? Because you don't have to, you have just one thesis. I mean, you may say it is not even a problem. Adolescent depression just goes away. If you can, of course, establish it in the body, right? If you have the facts, right? If you don't have the facts, don't say it, right? So that is the way, that is how you develop this. Now, see the similarity. Here, And still there are many hairs around because the hair is grayish brown in summer and white in winter. That is the thesis, right? It is all just about color, nothing about, what they eat or, how they breed and how beautiful these animals are. All that is true, but we are not interested. We just want to fit in facts in a very methodical, orderly way to develop a good essay. That's all we expect to do, not to show you all-round knowledge, right? We can say these hairs are a good source of protein, all that, but not relevant here. It's relevant only in this sense, right? So, with this statement, we even make it even narrower. We narrow it, right? So that it's easier to be relevant and get down to something. I know all the examiners have, of course, know the answer to this. Who wrote this? Do you know? Any trainings? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was a spring of hope. It was a winter of despair. Does anyone know? Can anyone tell me who wrote this?
Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah, Tale of Two Cities. That's right, right. So this is what Charles Dickens wrote. Has anybody read this book?
A bit of it.
Bit of it, right, right. Why is that it was a bit of it? Right. Can you tell me why?
He takes about 2 pages to describe even one scenery, sir.
Yeah. But how did you get into that? What made you read it? What made you start reading?
Well, I watched the movie first and I loved the movie.
Okay, right. I'm talking to a different generation now, right? They watched the movie first. But when you read the book, what happened when you read this little bit at the very first paragraph?
No, the very first paragraph was actually very, very catchy.
Very catchy, isn't it? This is one of the most famous introductions to a book ever. So yes. It's incredibly beautiful, right? I mean, it's something that I think after the exam, whenever it is going to be, you should read the book, right? It's not all that great as you go on reading, but I mean, you can read it, but you also, my God, how well he started, how he caught my attention, right? That how he gripped me, how he hooked me, that is why we say the hook, right? So the first sentence is very important, right? As you can see, so Charles Dickens must have sold millions of copies because of this particular, just one sentence, isn't it? Right? Nothing there. Right. So now let's go get to the body of the essay, right? Now, what do I say? Give purpose and relevance to the paragraph. If the problem of increasing depression in adolescents is a fact, then there would be a major impact on family, school, and the emerging adult's future. And then you go on describing this little more in your first paragraph. And next, give evidence against for and against. Sorry, I quote mentioned not against, for and against. Okay. So here I would like to quote 2 sources. One of epidemiological surveys in developed countries and the figures of suicide and attempted suicide available in all countries, right? And then by now you should know. Now you should have your facts available to you if you're going to write this essay, right? If without facts, it's going to be much more difficult, right? So, so you would say the epidemiological surveys clearly show that it is increasing, right? Along with the depression, with adult depression itself, but there's a more marked increase in the adolescents, right? And again, we see the same trend in the figures of suicide, again increasing, as well as suicide attempts. So then you support your contention, you support your thesis that it is actually increasing. And then talk about the caution, express caution, that is explain and interpret the evidence. For example, these surveys have used screening instruments, right? And when you use screening instruments in the community, you could be detecting unhappiness rather than clinical depression. I mean, that's, you all know that, right? That you have to be extremely careful. But go on to bring some other evidence and show that there really has been an increase. Okay. That is because the suicide figures have gone up. I mean, suicide is not something that is screening. So attempt to suicide have clearly increased. So that you know that 50% of the attempt suicides have depression. So that way you can now quote good evidence and then establish the fact that this is the case. Right. And then the next paragraph, because remember you have 1 hour, right? We are not now, the story about the white hair can be read in 5 minutes, and that is meant for a 6-year-old and 7-year-old, right? To get the, but this is a 1 hour affair, and that you have to, you can't just write 1 paragraph. You have to develop your body a little more, right? And then you might say, now I would like to examine the effect on the family, right? So, and then, so what would you write if it is the effect on the family, right? If you have evidence that, if you know the evidence, that if you facts, then you can write that. But even if you don't have the evidence, if you don't have the facts, you can put in some, I mean, your clinical experience, because you have adolescent who is depressed. Families do not interpret this as depression at all. Unlike in adults, they do not interpret behaviors arising from mental disorder in childhood and adolescence as due to mental illness. Therefore, there's constant arguments, quarrels, and even physical abuse to a certain extent. And that we know that physical abuse leads to suicide. Right? So the effect on the family and the effect of the family's reaction on the adolescent. Right? So and then you would write about the school, effect on the schoolwork, right? And then you would write failure of examination, etc. Right? The difficulties in the school, behaviors in the school. You would write all that, and then you would write about the effect on his own life. They continue to be undiagnosed, and then the danger of abuse of substance abuse. Then by now you should know that certain things like internet addiction, that in the case of internet addiction, 50% of them, they have depression. So now is the time to put in all that into the body, right? So you do all that, and then, but critically, and then in the conclusion, you tie all this together. Show relevance for now and future. Make a strong impression, right? Say, so you would write something like, adolescent depression increase is real, and it is tied up to today's stresses arising in competitive culture, both at home and school. These effects are equally felt in both these situations. Further, we do not have the knowledge as to how this will affect their future lives, right? This is an increasing trend that requires changes in education system and parental expectations, as well as child rearing practices. And we too must improve our skills at interviewing adolescents, diagnosing depression, and proper treatment. So what we have done is that we are now that we have argued all these based on facts, in the conclusion, you don't have to bring facts. You can now tie it all together, show the relevance, right? And then make a strong impression. The impression maybe we too must improve our skills at interviewing adolescents, because psychiatrists are not good at interviewing adolescents, right? That because they are very difficult to interview, right? because they don't follow the rules of the game. So therefore, and that there are many other issues, like adolescents are naturally suspicious of us, right? They invariably is a parent who brings them, and they always think that there's always been conflict between him and the parent, and the adolescent is always say suspicious that we have team of parents. So there are many issues, right? So, and diagnosing depression in the adolescents is much more difficult, and also treatment is difficult because they don't normally respond to the usual treatment that we give to the adults, because the difference between placebo and antidepressant response in adolescents is very, very, very small. Right? So there are many issues that we know you can write. So that is how you develop an introduction, and then a thesis, and then you work towards developing evidence for and against your thesis in your body, and then come to conclusion. So that is the ideal way to do it. But if you don't remember all this that I said about the essay, go back to the white hair, right? And always think, did I write like that story of white hair? Or did I just mention all the things about the hair? Like it is a lovely animal, it's very innocent, and it eats only tender leaves or tender grass. It breeds. It breeds ferociously or whatever. Like without writing any of these things, white hair story remains white hair and very organized. So that is how you write essays, right? So let me point out some more general points. Always write an outline. Never ever write an essay without an outline, because you have 1 hour, right? And I would suggest that you spend at least 10 minutes writing a good outline, because what happens is that however good you are at writing, right? However a good writer you are, we forget things, right? And then we try to fit it in to something else, and so we get into a mess, right? And then the essay goes haywire. So never write a good essay without an outline, and attach it to the main essay, because then the examiner can see that this guy has written an outline, right? And don't be boring, right? Because keep away from making boring statements, right? Because examiners get bored easily, and that if you write very boring statements that examiner has read 15 times, he is going to fall asleep, right? Don't do that. And don't write what everyone writes, right? Don't try to write. Also, the next thing is don't try to write everything you know. For example, the essay that we saw on the COVID-19 patients, management of mental disorder, is an attempt where everything has been brought to it. It's a bit of a jumble, right? Too many things. There's no need to do that, right? Because this is not a test of how extensive your knowledge is. It is not a test. It is a test of something else. I'll tell you what it is. Don't add fillers, right? Never write essays in point form. That is, of course, never thing. If you write in essays in point form, I think you should fail on the spot, right? Always be relevant and be critical, right? So that you can develop relevant themes, put them together, and you can show a critical faculty, right? Very important. And another habit I have seen sometimes is bringing culture and religion, saying that in our culture, in our Buddhist culture, there is no violence. Violence is not encouraged, right? Now, which I call bullshit, that don't write things like that, right? Then stick to psychiatry, medicine, psychology, sociology. So stick to those disciplines. Don't ever go out of this, right? When you write essays. And facts matter a lot, because by now you should have the knowledge, right? And ability to quote matters a lot. You may not be able to remember the names that you quote, but you can say that's okay, right? Say that, for example, show that they if say that psychiatrist's role is limited in prevention of depression. So you may have read, right, that that the evidence that treatment of depression prevents suicide in a given society is limited, right? The only studies that are shown are in certain Swedish cities where it has shown to reduce, but it doesn't, even though it is staring at in your face, it is not well established that treatment of depression by psychiatrists reduces suicide rate. So that if you can have that knowledge, that level of knowledge, display that knowledge, right? So ability to quote is, I can't remember who did the study, but I can quote that study. There's a good Swedish study to show that it worked up to a point, right? And that the rest of the world, it has not been shown so far. And read outside psychiatry. For God's sake, do that. That is not necessarily, that is of course probably not relevant for those who are sitting for the exam this year, but the junior ones, you should read. Very important, because then you will be able to write better essays. And so what is a marking scheme? There is no marking scheme for essays, generally speaking. This is what I have always had in mind. 50% for knowledge, and for example, critical knowledge, right? Not necessarily knowledge. 20% for structural organization of the essay. 30% for critical evaluation of facts and procedures, right? And then you add 40 to 50% for ES. This happens in all undergraduate and postgraduate exam. What is this ES? That is the examiner sympathy, right? So examiner sympathy comes in and gives you enough marks to go up to 50. ES will not push you beyond 50, but it can push you up to 50, right? But don't depend on that, right? It's not necessarily the case always, right? So work on these 50%, 20%, 30%, and see if you can do this. What you should do now is try and write an essay every 2 to 3 days. Show them to your trainers. And if you are if you are not in contact with trainers with all these problems, you can send them to your friends, right? And ask them comment, right? Is it as good as the white hair? That is the question you must always ask, right? I will end the presentation there. Would someone like to? Would you like to write a small story like the white hair? No. If you are in the mood, do write and read it over to us. Not an essay, just a story. Anyone?
So are you going to give a topic or just a free?
No, they can choose any topic.
Okay.
They can write a very short story because they have no time to write essays. Over the next 10-15 minutes, write a story. Like the white hair. So that we are moving away from essays, we are just getting into stories. Would you like to do that?
It doesn't have to be anything in relation to psychiatry. Just
No,
something.
Nothing. Once you write that, we will come back to it, and one of you can read 1 or 2, and then we can see this relevance to psychiatry again from a different angle. Okay, so we'll take a 15-minute break, while you write it.
So are you going to read any other essays on the other two topics or no?
We can read one more.
Okay.
After the writing.
The second one would
work.
be interesting about the suicide prevention.
Yeah, we'll do that later. Right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We'll take a break, right?
All right.
I'm going to have a cup of tea. That is
Okay.
the
Okay, so it's a tea break.
tea break.
Virtual tea break.
Yeah. Well, whereas the trainees will not have a break, they will write a small story.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you. Sumudhu and Chamara, you can have your tea and come back in 10 minutes.
Gihan, you should have told, sir, should have told the examiners also to write a story, no?
Oh my God. Yeah, so yeah, it brings back all the memories of the tough time that we had Peradini, isn't it? On Thursdays.
I was thinking you might tell the examiners also to write, Kira.
Yeah, just a minute.
Okay, bye.
So have you had your tea?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Is any trainee prepared with the story? Or you want more time?
Yes, do you need more time? I'm glad that you didn't give it to the examiners.
So we were just talking about that. The examiners were
Yeah.
quite worried that you'd ask the examiners.
Ask the examiners to write a story.
We went back to your room in Peradeniya 20 years ago, how afraid we were writing the essays.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Have we taken the 15 minutes or not yet?
Not yet, probably.
I wrote something small.
Good,
Uh,
good. You want to read it? Yeah.
Shall I put it on the chat box?
Or maybe you can share it if you give a co-host.
Read it. Might be easier.
Yeah, it's better to read it. I think.
Yeah.
Read it.
Okay. I put it on the chat box. I never got to ask him for my rupee.
Okay.
Every day, going home by bus from school, I'd give 10 rupees to the conductor, expecting change in return. This was 20 years ago, when a piece of cake was 7 rupees, and you could give a 5 rupee coin to someone begging in the street without being asked by him if you were hard of money. Every day, I would sit at the window, eyeing the conductor from the corner of my eye, hoping he'll give me back my change, never daring to ask. The rupee would have bought me a Delta toffee, the not so viral kind. But each day, when I got down from the bus, he would avert my eye, or he'd simply look through me, or rush to re-embark on his journey before the next private bus driver caught up. I wonder where he is now, this thin man with a loud mouth, who wore oversized shirts and smoked in the bus depot on the slide. I wonder what he did with my rupee.
Great. Yeah, that's a nice story. Right. So, anyone else? Any other stories? Anybody else? There are many of you over there. I like that.
62.
62, yeah?
Yes. That's with the examiners as well.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm Vishwa. I wrote a small poem, but not a story. Could I share it on the screen?
Yeah.
When the other person is sharing the screen, so I'm unable to share it.
You can read it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Maybe
I wrote it.
Somebody can make her co-host, no? It's Tamara, whoever is. You can easily make.
Yeah, I think
her
Sumudu, can you
co-host.
make Vishwa do again the co-host, please?
Or else I can send it to Dr. Sumudu so she can share the screen.
Okay, that's better.
Vishwa, I made your co-host. You can share.
Okay.
You can share now.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see now.
Is it? Can you see it now, sir?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. I think you got the point. That is, it's enjoyable at leisure, surprisingly interesting, stressful it is, And so that the whole purpose of this is to show you that it is a very enjoyable exercise, and that just don't let stress, exam stress, let you get stressed up and lose that enjoyment. And do it in an enjoyable way. And
Yes.
the enjoyable way is the right way. Right? And that is a important thing that you should learn. Right? Okay, anything else? Any other? Anyone else?
So this is Dilini. I have a very short story,
Yeah.
if I can read it to you.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It's titled Life. And I've said that they say life begins with your first breath, a shuddering cry of a newborn, surrounded by a crowd of smiles. While I'm hesitant to go against science, I would argue that life can begin at many different points. And that was certainly true of me. My life first began in infancy, childhood memories of play fighting my brothers, hugs and consolation from my mother, and relentless encouragement from my dad. My life began again in my 20s, sleepless nights cramming notes, laughing with my friends, scolded by the elders, and saving patients' lives. My life finally began again in motherhood. And that surprisingly was with the shuddering cry of my son. That's what I read.
Okay, so you all enjoyed writing that, didn't you? All of you who wrote those, you enjoyed doing it, didn't you? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Now that is the very point that I want to make. So write something that you yourself will enjoy doing, right? Now let's get back to another essay. Where are we? Just look it out. Not this one. No. This one. This is the. Is it visible to others?
Yes, we can see it.
Psychiatrist's role in the prevention of suicide is a limited one. Discuss critically. Okay. So we say.
Yeah. Shall I read it for you? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. According to the French sociologist, suicide is more than an individual act resulting from an underlying psychiatric disorder. It's a global phenomenon defined as an act with a fatal outcome, deliberately initiated and performed in the knowledge or expectations of its fatal outcome. Suicide is a serious global public health issue. More than 700,000 people die by suicide every year, which is one person every 40 seconds. It accounts for 1.3% of all deaths worldwide, making it the 17th leading cause of death in 2019. 77% of suicides occurred in low and middle income countries in 2019. Suicide date, World Health Organization 2019. An individual's vulnerability to suicide arises from a confluence of individual and environmental factors, including genetic, psychological, social, cultural, and adverse life events, such as loss, trauma, and interpersonal conflict. Suicidal ideations can occur when an individual is at stress, often from cumulative sources, intensified by underlying mood and certain personality traits such as impulsivity, aggression, etc. Therefore, prevention of suicide requires a comprehensive approach that spans systems, organizations, culture, communities, and environments. In this process, psychiatrists can play an important role. One important role a psychiatrists play is providing and promoting high-quality mental health care to individuals who are experiencing psychological distress with or without mental illness. They are mental health specialists who understand suicidal behavior, its potential causes and triggers. So they are quite suitable and competent in providing that care. A psychiatrist's training, of which supervised clinical practice is a core component, it provides them with identifying high-risk groups effectively, which is very important in preventing suicide. There are indications that for each act of suicide by an adult, there may have been more than 20 other acts of attempted suicide. Therefore, a psychiatrist's clinical expertise will be valuable in identifying these high-risk groups. Psychiatrists endeavor a structured, individualized approach in assessing individuals with suicidal behavior. So the formation of a warm, empathetic relationship with them will keep them in the psychiatric services, enabling support. Given the well-established link between childhood adversity and suicide across lifespan, psychiatrists can identify mental illness early in children and intervene early, which will facilitate the process of prevention of suicide in the long run. Also, in low-resource settings such as Sri Lanka, psychiatrists provide psychotherapy and psychological support for individuals who attempt suicide and their families. Psychiatrists in low and middle income settings play an important role in health education. One good example is the contribution of teaching undergraduates and postgraduate medical students, the assessment of persons who had engaged in self-harm and aftercare in reducing suicide rate in Sri Lanka, which was one of the activities done by Presidential Task Force for Suicide Prevention in 1997. However, as mentioned earlier, prevention of suicide spans cultures, organizations, communities, etc. Prevention of suicide has many aspects to cover public health measures. Has many aspects to cover. Public health measures are of great importance, is one important aspect. This component should aim to reduce modifiable risk factors such as unemployment, homelessness, educational disadvantage, etc. To achieve wider collaboration of psychosocial worker with social services department, information sharing in between different systems are needed, which is beyond the scope of the psychiatrist. Coordinated, assertive aftercare plays an important role in the prevention of suicides. For this, ongoing psychotherapy and psychological support is required for recovery and prevention of suicides for this suicide. For this, family therapy, cognitive behavior therapy are needed, especially in low and middle income countries where there is a limited number of psychologists. This task is done by psychiatrists. But considering their workload, it's not a feasible task, and psychiatrists play a limited role in this aspect. Another important area in prevention of suicide is substance abuse. Substance misuse has a complex relationship with suicide. Problems with regard to substance use is present in many deaths due to suicide. Therefore, apart from treating comorbid psychiatric illnesses and health education, which is done by psychiatrists, wider change in policies regarding substance use should be done at national level. Limiting access to means is an important thing in preventing suicides. Sri Lanka was the second highest country with regards to rate of suicide in 1995, which was 47 per 100,000. Since 1995, for next decade, suicide rates declined by 50%. Most significant measure was banning of pesticides, which limited the access. Currently, there are 2 pesticides in use which need modifications in their use. Though it's being suggested by expert committee comprising of psychiatrists, it's yet to be implemented. Prevention of suicide is a challenge world over. Reduction of suicide mortalities has been prioritized as a global target by WHO, multimodal approach involving all stakeholder groups in the development of policies, while collaboration among these groups is important in preventing suicide. In this complex process, I think the psychiatrist plays a limited role through his or her task is invaluable. I think that's it.
So I like to ask the let me ask the examiners, what is the mark that you have in mind?
We can give a chance to the chief examiner, for Shehan Williams.
Yeah. Any comments by the examiners about this?
So I thought, Tilini here, so I thought it touched on the topic, but it was slightly off topic, I felt.
Yeah.
It was at an angle to what
Yeah.
the topic was. It wasn't answering the question.
Yeah,
No.
I think, yeah, I agree with Tilini. I think it was more lot to do with treatment of, did a lot of about the psychiatrist's role in treatment, not about the wider, the environmental, not enough emphasis was done about, given about the wider environmental factors, more emphasis on treatment of patients.
And also the topic is about the role of the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So that is what is
So I think,
the core point, which would be nice if they started off by saying that suicide is the main problem we have, but the psychiatrist's role is controversial or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Also didn't touch up some of the preventive measures like media, even some of the issues, education of doctors, media, and that kind of issues.
I mean, you could argue that the main preventive action taken has nothing to do with the psychiatrist, actually. Media means restriction is not a psychiatric treatment, for example.
I said the initial paragraphs are like to the point, but latter paragraphs are like beating around the bush and not to the point.
Yeah, yeah. And also, did you notice? Sorry.
So they were here. So, and also answer doesn't seem to show that the candidate has understood the complexities of suicide also. So it's just kind of one track thinking, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could see that coming from the introduction, isn't it? Introduction is very lengthy and very diffuse and so he or she has stuffed everything into this, right? That is known. So that is not a good introduction, right? The introduction has to be crisp, right? So you might say, I agree, right? Psychiatry has a limited role, right? So and then expand on that. Or you might want to say something slightly different and then say that let us see the limited role that psychiatrists can play in prevention of suicide, right? Something like that. That would have been just sufficient, because the candidate has wasted a lot of time and words, talking about all this stuff in the introduction. It doesn't. The second point I noticed is that there is no outline. At least it's not in the. It's not. It has not come with the essay. So even if he or she had it, so there you have to have an outline, because that is the classical sign is that she has suddenly remembered that, oh my God, I have to say that the most important measure is limit the access to the popular method of suicide. Come way later, right? So so when you write an essay like this, you have 1 hour, you have 15 minutes to write a good outline and think, right? What do psychiatrists do? Are we all going to the media and talking about suicide all the time and doing all these things? No, we see patients, right? That's fundamentally what we do. So we do suicide assessments. Like we diagnose depression. We diagnose dependence issues. We diagnose family issues, family abuse. These are the 3 important causes of suicide in Sri Lanka. We know that, right? So what do? we do assessments, right? And how effective are assessments? So that is now you are getting into the body. In the body, you argue these things out. that we know that the so-called screening instruments are of no value, right? And I think there are nearly 20 screening instruments of suicidal intentions and suicide risk. They're all useless, right? And our assessments themselves are not all that valid. That's the question. Because suicide is essentially an impulsive act under when the patient is in a great deal of distress. And the word they use is perturbation. That is, it is at the height of perturbation that the person commits suicide. And depression contributes to it, right? The substance use contributes to it. But the perturbation is the one. And often psychiatrist is not there at the time of the perturbation. And psychiatry is not all that great at predicting, this will happen, right? So that way, you sort of constantly stick to the particular theme. That is the question, the issue. Psychiatrist role. So maybe you can have few sentences saying, public education, all that can be done, but they are not all that relevant. It is really what we do that matters. Psychiatrist. And also what I said about treatment of depression, it probably is effective, but we don't know to what extent. Maybe one of the trainees should do a study, because the reason why, then you can also say why it is so difficult to do a study like that, because suicide is a rare event. And it is difficult to do prospective studies of people who have been treated with depression when the event at the end is a rare event, because then you need very large samples, and that's a huge study. So that may be why it's difficult to, otherwise it's a very good question, isn't it? All these patients are depressed and we treat them. Are they still committing suicide? Good question, right? But very difficult. So those are things that, that's where I come into the essay. I thought that rather than all this stuff that has been brought in, and then of course about all these social and cultural factors, because then you can say, yeah, it's a cultural trait which comes with the patient, and there's not a lot the psychiatrist can do. For example, if you are treating a patient in Middle East with severe depression, the risk of suicide is very low, right? You don't worry about. Say if you are treating a patient with depression in Ireland, the risk of suicide is much lower. On the other hand, with the same severity of depression, if you are treating that in Hungary or even in Sri Lanka in the past, the risk could be much higher. That's the sort of thing I would like to have heard, right? Rather than these routine things that everybody says, which is very irrelevant to this particular question, right? And also very tedious, when you put all that down. So that's what I have to say. I still like to ask what marks you would like to give, So what I have to tell the trainees is go back to the story of the white hair. So it's a classic story where there is an essay that you written, which is tightly knit and very well concluded. So learn to start writing like this. I'm sure if the examination is postponed due to COVID, thanks to COVID, maybe you have time to practice this, right? And certainly the first and second years, you have plenty of time to practice writing, because it is the reason I asked you to write a story is because it is within you to write it. It's just that we get so sort of we get tight, we get the tension tells, and then we write nonsense. That is what we should avoid doing. And write essays, show them to your trainers, get them to criticize it, show it to your colleagues, senior colleagues maybe, so your senior registrar, and see what they say, right? So make your essays right and relevant and critical. So those are the issues that we should always stick to. Any questions at the end of all this? Sorry, they've seen the roof, my ceiling, but then. Examiners haven't given marks. They are not willing to open their cards, you see.
In fear of litigations.
Yeah, how much would you have given to that essay? Really? Deva?
Sir,
I
I
would
would
say
have passed.
50. I would also pass maybe 55, sir.
So the reason would be what I call the
sympathy bit, sir. You're accusing us of sympathy,
yeah.
aren't you?
Yes, factor would add 30. I would have given about 30. Right.
Oh gosh, sir.
Yeah, that's the problem. Right. Because it's not relevant. Well, the essay is not about
it
what
is
is
off
being asked.
topic. Huh?
Yeah. It's completely off topic. And I don't know why I give you 30. Even I must be having yes. Right.
I think we would feel that the candidate knew the stuff but was off topic. Yeah.
Yeah. You are assuming.
Actually, what happened when we mark essays, they are not up to the point, as you mentioned earlier, at the very beginning. It's really difficult to give a fail mark for an essay question, unlike in structured question. I also felt for this one also maybe 40, my max was 40. But then I
so
thought,
you added another 12 from the ES.
Yes, perhaps, yes. That usually happens when we mark here. I don't know, it happens to me when I mark essay question. But last time, of course, there were so many failures. The answer I marked, essay, I think you were the second examiner for that question. So
I think what happens is that we forget that essay question has 1 hour, and that this is a test not so much of knowledge and of many other things, you know, ability to read the question, ability to think about it, ability to think about it critically, ability to organize the answer, and relentlessly remain relevant. That is the statement that I like to make. Relentless relevance, right? That is never going away from the main topic, main thesis, and that is if a candidate can show that candidate should get good marks.
I'm a third year registrar. I'm asking because the madam said you were an examiner for essays last year. So now we've been having lectures and we've been told various instructions about how to write essays. I was just wondering, now we might be making mistakes without actually, because the last batch of candidates can't be too much different from us when it comes to, you know, the capacity and writing ability. So were there any killer mistakes that you would notice that would have led to failure? Because we might actually be like unknowingly making those mistakes as well.
I think in the essay, people often don't make killer mistakes. They just write, they just pad it up. They just, you know, plug in with unwanted, unnecessary information. That is what they do. So in the hope that, you know, you throw a lot of stones, hoping that one will hit, you know, that's the practice. But if you, in an answer, if you write, particularly say in a short essay, structured essay, if you make a big blunder like, I don't know, I can't just think of something offhand, but if you say something completely wrong, then of course you are likely to fail completely. In essay, it's difficult to fail completely also, right? because it is not a, it is the purpose is not so much to test for knowledge. Purpose is to see how good you are upstairs here, right? Can you think critically about issues and write about it? That is, but that you have to practice before the exam. You see that they for example, I tell you, there was once a presentation from NIMH where they showed that they looked at it's an audit of the ECT, right? The main indication was, I mean, I'm just saying it offhand, but I can't remember exactly details. At least schizophrenia was quite high up in the list of indications for ECT, right? So then somebody asked, what is the, because for some reason people had the impression that we were doing all the right things at Peradeniya, right? Somebody asked, what are your main indicators? So I quickly said, because everybody said, I would say, clearing the patients. That was the main indicator, because we have a small ward, we have too many patients. So anybody who was just even mildly depressed will receive ECT, because we have to get the manic patients, get the patients out. So it is that sort of critical analysis that you have to do, right? So we are not all good, right? We have a lot of bad things, right? And so psychiatrists also do a lot of bad things, right? So say, for example, I take the other one, COVID-19. It is really not so much about, the issues, what arises from COVID and all that, right? That is okay. You should mention that. But the key issue is, how do you treat your patient? The mental health disorders management of it at this time, at the time of COVID-19. What are the main issues? Main issue, you must say those issues, right? Issues are that, you can't get patients and that you can't get close to the patients. Think practically, right? And that even if it was one patient getting positive, the whole board have to close, right? So we have serious issues now at this point, right? And those are things that you should mention. And that you have also problems distinguishing between COVID-induced psychiatric disorders and from other disorders. So there are so these are many issues that the essay mentions some of these things, like inability to get close to the patient. True, that's good, but it has to be in a very well organized manner. You must write that down. Right? Then say the person. So what? Say if you want to read about issues regarding COVID-19 management of COVID-19, go to Royal College of Psychiatry's bulletin. It is free. It's a free issue, April issue. There is a write-up about the issues with regard to COVID-19. So to learn how to write. It's a good write-up, right? It's of course written in a slightly different way. It's a case history, no, that's not necessarily an essay. But he raises many of these issues, right? For example, I mean, we send medication by post, and it is probably not very good, because we have no idea what is happening right out there. And then so on the other hand, you could say we should do a video interview with the patient before we write a prescription, right, and send it by post. That that's a new thought, isn't it? Right, and that is the way to think critically and put them down in your essay.
So Deva here, if I may add to that, I would have liked to see the candidate talking about this new thing now. Earlier, when we see patients, there was no anxiety in us as such. Now we are worried that we might also get infected, and that also has affected not only the other staff members. They are also worried to attend the patients. So that also has added to the difficulties in managing patients these days. This is something new, I think, during COVID era.
So you don't have to write everything that you know.
Yeah.
That is what most people believe, but you don't. But remain relentlessly relevant. That is my advice. And then don't ever move away from the main point, right? Because the moment you do, you lose out, right? Because you create a bad impression, right? That is what happens, right? You know, so I mean, many of you must be cooking at home, right? Do you add everything that you have in the kitchen, right? You know, some bit of cloves and bit of cardamom and bit of salt, bit of this, bit of that, right? Bit of bacon into this. I mean, you don't do that, do you? You have a certain plan, certain way of doing things. And don't be ashamed. Go back to a clinical experience. And if you have a good clinical experience, you should have no problem answering a question like COVID-19, right? Because that is much easier than the suicide one. Because for the suicide one, you need more knowledge, right? You have to read a lot. For the adolescent depression, which I presented, you have to have a lot of knowledge. You should have read about it. But here you don't need so much, because it's a gift if you get it. So if you get a question like that. That is what you should do when write essays. Remaining relevant, and don't add every ingredient you have in the kitchen to your curry. Don't do that.
Sir, I'm Isuri, a third year registrar. I have a question. Before that, I wrote something in the break you gave. If you permit me, I'll read it as well. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I wrote, to be or not to be. Hamlet said to be or not to be. Or more specifically, Shakespeare made him say so.
Yeah.
He probably would have had complicated grief after his beloved father's death, yet no one thought he needed to be assessed by a psychiatrist. The young Danish prince, I feel sorry for him. Now that everything has become to be or not to be, more than ever, we will have the exam or not have the exam. Can we see the patients or not see the patients? Will I catch the virus or not catch the virus? Yet classes like this instill some hope to overcome this uncertainty. No matter how it would be, we have some why to look forward to. Well, I borrowed that too from Nietzsche, but thank you very much, sir, and the college for the wonderful lecture.
Thank you. It's a nice poem.
And sir, my question is, now there's this saying that's called whether to write critical essays or factual essays, and some say if we write a critical essay, and apparently if it's not the direction of the answer the examiner expected, then of course there's a chance that we might lose marks. But I personally, like some candidates especially, prefer to write the critical essays. Is it a myth that we have to debunk, or what is your opinion on that, sir?
Every essay has to have a critical element, right? Because if you don't have critical element at all, it's not a real essay. I mean, maybe if the question states discuss critically, then you have to be more critical, right? But even ordinary essay must have a section where you in the body, mainly the body, where you have a section where you give evidence, existing evidence against it, because in medicine is not an exact science, right? And the psychiatry is certainly not an exact science. So there is plenty of evidence against everything we do. For example, if you take treatment of depression, we know very well that our antidepressants are effective just marginally above placebo, right? But we know something more than that. We know that the more severe the depression, the more effective your antidepressants are, right? So that is the element that you have to show, right? So that you have to make a critical statement, right? In order to show the effectiveness in severe severe depression. So that level of that element should be there all the time. So don't worship knowledge. Be critical.
Thank you, sir.
Just a suggestion. So I think it would be beneficial for the candidates if they can read some of the essays written by IELTS examiners. It's available in the internet as well. They tell you how to organize an essay on any topic with your knowledge, and they tell you how the examiners mark the IELTS essays. I think it's not on psychiatry, but yeah, so the organization and essay and the components, I think it will be a bit important if they can read some of the essays.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I just want to repeat this thing about the rule of three, right? You know, there'll be three parts to the essay, and every section should have three sections, right? Three subsections, and the body can have more sections, but at least three. So that if they remember this, then they can, you know, practice writing. And it is not so much the length; it's how it is not the size of the gem that matters. It is how you know how luminous it is, so how beautiful the gem is. That's what matters in a gem, isn't it? So same thing with the essays. Any other comments, questions? So there's no great secret to this. Just practice, and you know there's no other way. I mean, you cannot keep away from writing essays and then suddenly go to the exam and write an essay. It won't work, right? So you must practice it. Practice repeatedly. Anyone else?
Okay, so then shall we wind up for the day?
I think 2 hours.
Yes, yeah. Okay, sir, thank you very much. Really appreciate and your commitment, and it really brought back memories of good old Peradeniya days when we were sitting in that big room of yours in the department from 12 to 2 p.m. on Thursdays afternoons. And we were so fear-stricken until you came to blast us and criticize our essays. And it's really commendable how meticulously Dr. Ranil Abeyasinghe molded his trainees to be good clinicians as well as good essay writers. I don't know whether we have kept up to your expectations, but at least we have tried our best. Thank you very much, sir, for sacrificing your Sunday evening. And I think it's really important, not only for the trainees, but also for the trainers, about the basics of essay writing and how to mark the essays, and especially the fact that you highlighted the importance of grabbing the attention, expanding on your view, and then the rule of three of the introduction, body, and the conclusion. And I think all the trainees also immensely benefited from this workshop, and that will definitely make them write better essays in the future, I mean, for this exam. And also, sir, you wanted to do another presentation or the college lecture on the evolution of the concept of schizophrenia, whether it will be better for you to do that for a college conference, the annual academic sessions, rather than for the college lectures.
Whatever, yeah. I can, if I do it for the college sessions, it's be 20 minutes, isn't it?
It will be 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Right? It's up to you.
But if,
up to you and the council to set.
I mean, we can give you the choice
Yeah.
whether you like to do it for the college like this online lecture, or we can give another topic for you for the college academic sessions. If you would like to do the concept of evolution of the concept of schizophrenia here.
Which would benefit more to the trainees? What are you thinking? What is your thinking about it?
For the trainees, of course, this will be a better platform. The college lecture, online lecture.
Yeah, check with them, and I am open to anything. Yeah, you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Or would you like to do any more? I mean, if by chance the exam gets postponed, we have a bit of time, or any more essay or short essay questions, or any clinical topics like long and the short case.
No, I think this is a lot.
All right, so then thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
That was really beneficial and very interesting and very stimulating. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, and the college.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.